open a beer and listen to those beer-loving cash flow guys.
Hey, are we just going to give her? That's right. This is episode 76 of Mike and Blaine. 76 episodes. I'm Mike Mylan, also known as Cashflow Mike, and that is my partner, Blaine Birch of Dry Run. What's up, Blaine?
Doing good. We were trying to stream simultaneously to 3 different platforms. I think we might have got one because I think the Riverside helps notes were lying to me. So we'll just go with what we got going. I think we hopefully live to YouTube right now. I guess we'll find out later.
That is fun. We have struggled. We have struggled with this, right? I mean, it's like, what in the hell are we doing? Why can't we figure this out?
I don't know. We're usually actually, I think we're just going live on LinkedIn. So Facebook's the one that's supposed to give me a button to push. I don't see a button to push. So I think we might have 2 out of 3 right now. So that's pretty cool.
This is probably why top quality podcasts have producers. They know that shit, right? They know how to figure it out.
Exactly. This is there's a lot of balls in the air when we start these things. So, but you know what? We'll find out later. I think we got a couple of them going live right now, so we'll find out.
Well, have you ever listened to a Joe Rogan episode, right? And I bring him up because he's the top podcaster in the world. But his episodes always seem like they start in the middle of a sentence. Like there was already a conversation going, and then they just fade into the conversation.
Yeah, he probably just got tired of the technology and said, "You know what? Let's just knock this out and go." And because I can see how frustrating some of this stuff is. It should be easier, but anyway, we're getting a little further along.
Okay, so I once again had a last minute let me figure out the topic, right? So, but before my topic, I want to know what you're drinking.
Yeah, so today I found this beer from Half Acre Brewery, and it's a Deep Space from Half Acre. And so I was, and it's 10%, so it's a bit of a heavier one than I kind of thought when I got into it. But so I popped over to the website because I wanted to know, what is it about Half Acre? What is it about this beer? And this is apparently it's a friend of the guys at Half Acre, spent a lot of time there. And what they said is this a little bit sadder story is he's now up in deep space. Like he's it sound to me like that he's passed, and so this is a dedication to him. So I did want to show that. They didn't have his name, but I did want to say that this is a Half Acre friend that is now up in deep space. So.
It's got a 70s vibe to it.
Complete 70s vibe. I got suckered into that. I had that one, and one that had a mad scientist, and one that had basically a transformer on the side of my can. So I was picking from cool cans this week, and this is the one I grabbed. So,
all right. So I think maybe the entire month of February. I haven't even told you this yet. Maybe 2 out of the 4, maybe 3 out of the 4, maybe 4 out of 4 if we can talk them into it, but. I may have an official sponsor for me this month.
Nice.
Right? Nice. Official sponsor. So let me introduce you to a sponsor you already know, you already love.
Neighbour Pat.
It's Neighbour Pat. And check this out. He made a special glass. And it looks backwards in that camera, but
it's good. It's good on my side. Good on my side.
So I'll be drinking Neighbour Pat's beer. And remember, he's kind of a home brewer. So he prints out, look at this. He printed out the label for it. He made a moose drool. So nice. I'm going to have a moose drool by Neighbour Pat, right? And
that is awesome.
And look how much he contributes to the party.
Oh, jeez. That is awesome. Neighbour Pat is a good friend of the show.
He's a great friend of the show. Check that out. It says St. Patrick's Pub. He's all in on beer and this show.
Nice, and don't pour that in your keyboard.
Yeah,
I may have done that before.
Try not to do that. But you know we're in the middle of an ice storm, so if it busts out all of a sudden, I've had flickers, right? Power flickers today.
Oh wow. Okay. Well. It's nice and sunny here. But, okay, so I'm curious. Do they have moose in Texas?
think so. I don't think so. If they would be, they'd be probably contained, right? I don't think they're wild. I don't think they get down this far.
Yeah, as far as I know, they don't. But I don't know. I'm sure there's a moose drool beer in Canada. I'm pretty sure I've seen that, but that's because moose are pretty common up in Canada. So I've seen them numerous times, and you cannot believe how big a moose is when you see them live and in person.
Well, you know what's interesting is the wild pig or the boars and the javelinas that run around down here, right? So that's an interesting new dynamic to driving. You know, when I was a state trooper, someone actually hit a farm pig, right? It got out onto the road. Somebody hit it, and it flipped the car over because it was so low. It got underneath the tire. It actually flipped the car over. I mean, the deer would just demolish it. You know, anything large would just demolish it. I did not expect a pig to be able to flip a car over, but it did just because of how low it is.
How low it is, and they're heavy. They're big. They're big animals, and it's moose are 10 times, 1,000 times bigger than that. And the problem with moose, they got long legs, and so the body, which is enormous, is basically at your windshield height. So they're pretty dangerous on the road.
Man, neighbor Pat never steers me wrong. He always brings down a winner. Nice job, Pat.
Nice.
And I think remember he had a handle made. It's like a Weebert, right?
Yes.
Weebert was kind of the big name brand. I call him Neighbor Pat, but but Weebert. So today, here's our topic, right? Here's our topic. Bill Gates, right? Rarely do I run across stuff, by him. I don't think we've talked a lot about Bill Gates, but he said something. I'm like going, you know what? This makes a lot of sense to me, and I wanted to debate it with you. So, your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. Right, so the unhappy customer, he's saying, is where you learn the most.
Yeah.
What you got to tell you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I see where he's coming from. I also think there's a dangerous area there as well that I think. So I think it'll make for a really interesting topic and really interesting debate and discussion because, you're a lot of customers you never hear from them. You kind of assume they're happy. They're using the software, but it's the ones that are really active and talk with you and are passionate about the software. For us, the software for us, where you can learn a lot. But the one thing I do want to preface it with is, can you get misled by a customer and they're unhappy because they're actually not a very good customer for you? And can that mislead you away from your perfect customers because you're kind of listening to kind of the squeaky wheel, but are they the right customer for you then? So a couple angles, I think there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right because I've been prey to just listening to the loudest person, right? The one that complains a lot. But there's a point in time when it's a diminishing return for that customer, which means, you've been so petty on so many things that I just don't think that you're giving me the feedback I need. So then you just start to appease, or you just like going, well, this isn't a good relationship for either one of us. So if you don't like us, just quit. Just quit. Yeah, because that's the big question I think you have to ask is their opinion valid for what you're doing? Not valid as a person or anything, but valid for what you're doing. If they're kind of your perfect customer and you built, like for us software, we built the software for them. Here's how we're helping them. Boy, I think you have to take their input just incredibly seriously. But, sometimes there's customers that come in and they're just, I don't know, they buy, but they're really not looking for what you offer. It's a little bit like, going into the fancy wine bar and expecting them to have really terrific microbrews or vice versa or whatever. Like, is that your customer? I shouldn't. Those are probably kind of related. Yeah, that's an expectation problem there. Yeah. So I heard a stat when I first read this. I heard a stat a while back that I had to think about, and I'm talking about. And I actually put this story in my seminar one time. But they say you only hear from 3% of the people that have a problem with you. right? That was kind of the stat, and
Yeah.
my first gut was like going, well, thank God I can't deal with those three. What would I do with the other 97% that don't like it? But then I'm like going, is that true? Is that really true that you only hear from 3%? And then maybe that's why they're a great source of learning. Because here was the story I thought of when I heard that stat. My grandma lives in Orangeville, Illinois, right? And if you don't know Orangeville, 200 years ago, 4 guys went into a cornfield, knocked over some stocks, and said, we're in Orangeville. And it's doubled in size since.
That big, hey?
It's that big, right? But they have like a convenience store. They got a bank. They got like a little bar, and they got like a car shop. I mean, it's like 200 people live in this town, really in the middle of a cornfield. I think they grow watermelons down there too, right? So it's one of those towns that nobody really. It's not even on a major highway, really. It was just kind of there.
Yeah.
So I go visit my grandmother, and she walks into the bank, right? We go into the bank together, and there's a guy on the phone, at a desk near the front door, right? You know how like we'll call him loan officer or relationship managers or anything like that. She goes up to the counter, but she's staring at this guy at the desk, and he's on the phone. She's just staring at him. She just walks up, does her business, makes her deposit, walks out. She's still looking at him. She doesn't say a word, walks out. And we walk back to her house. She goes, did you see that? How rude that was? I'm like going, what, you staring at him? So yeah, that was rude. He goes, no, he didn't even acknowledge me. There was no hi, bye, kiss my ass, nothing. He didn't even acknowledge me. I'm 96 years old going into this bank. I've been here, since, this thing's pretty much been founded, and you can't say hello. And she was offended by that. And I'm going, well, that's kind of a weird thing to be offended by. Why didn't you just say hello to him, right? And it'd been over. But no. So she told me. Then she told the neighbor that was standing out in her yard. Then she had a little club of girls get together that night where they just talk about each other, really, and they talked about him, right? Yeah. And then she told my aunt when she came over, and then I heard her tell another aunt on the phone about how rude John down at the bank was. John was just on the phone minding his business. And I'm like going, that's why you need to stay close to your customers, because if you're only hearing from 3%, that means that 90% are probably just like my grandmother, where they're telling 25 other people the minute they're mad, and they're not talking to you.
Yeah. No, it's no, and I'm gonna flip it on us end, because I totally agree with that, but I know that we've been guilty in the past, the odd time of chasing, trying to keep everybody happy all the time. And you're getting pulled in a lot of directions. You know what happens is we didn't pay enough attention to the people who are really successful and the people that loved us. And then you go in and talk with them, and they're like, oh my God, and they've been around for years, and they love us, and they're, telling us how we helped them and how we helped them. And like 5 years ago, you helped us do this. And like, wow, that's amazing. But that information to me was, yeah, now we know what they love about us, what we're doing for them. And then when you ask, like, I know we talked with a customer a few weeks ago, and then at the end, when we do this all the time, it's like, so what bugs you? Like, what would you change? Oh, well, just like, oh, there's a little, this, oh yeah, that's rolling out next week. Like we had, I think we learned so much more from that happy customer. And I think it gets so dismissed because people get so focused on the unhappy ones. Right. But boy, let's make that customer even happier, and let's get more of that customer. Let's keep solving that problem. They're killing it over here. Because at times it feels like we got misled and trying to play, like we've said a bunch of times, play outside of our lane rather than sticking in our lane, right?
Well, I mean, most of us need customers, and the last thing we want is unhappy ones, right? So I think that's why you tend to focus on it, because, I mean, yeah. I don't like when somebody's mad at me, right? Even a friend here in the neighborhood, Pat, don't be mad at me. Brager, don't be mad at me. I don't like when people are mad at me. So I think that's why you focus on it so much, right? You're like, why are they mad at me? What have I done? So you try harder to turn that guy's opinion around because you want champions. And what you described on your happy customer were those champions. But how do we capture that? How do you capture the champion and make it worthwhile for them to even do more for you? Right?
Yeah, and that's that is literally like we do it the old-fashioned way. We just like to talk with them, but we go. See, the thing is that the angry ones will come to you, so you know who they are, and you get to talk with them. And but you have to go out and find a lot of times your happy customers, because they're really not. They're not coming and necessarily patting you on the back, even though they love what you're doing, right? So you have to go find them, and you have to start those conversations with them. And I think it's just a balance, right? You have to balance that out. But like I remember, we're going back probably over 15 years, but I was teaching at the university when I had during the time that I owned my creative agency. So I was teaching design over at the university, and what I found, and it was so frustrating, was the bad students always took up so much time that it took away from the good students. And when I say bad students and good students, I'm actually not talking about the capability. The capability, that's what I'm there for, is to try and help them get better as a designer, to get better in their craft. What I'm talking about are the ones that didn't give a shit and they're always late on their projects, and they were bad students in that they really didn't care and they didn't put any effort in. They were late on everything, all of that kind of stuff. A group project, they were the ones that were just like destroyed groups, and they took up so much time. And what happened was, it was so frustrating because I'm like, we have these great students over here that are so engaged and so interested, and a lot of them are incredibly talented. And I sometimes felt like I'm shortchanging them because I'm not giving them the time, and they've earned it. They've earned every minute of that time, and I'm just floundering over here trying to deal with shitty late garbage, right? And that's what it feels like sometimes with customers too, is that it also can it lead to you ignoring those good customers and making sure that you just are doubling down on those good customers.
Well, I mean, I think that, what do they say, 90% of your time is spent with 10% of your customers, and it's usually the bad ones.
Yeah,
or the ones with problems, right? But that's probably true. But I don't know that I'd want it another way. If someone's happy and they're using the product or the service the way it was intended, they're getting value out of it. They keep repeating with either renewed subscriptions or just hiring you back or referring you to others. Why is that bad? I mean, they've got their own lives. I shouldn't be in their life. I mean, every time I got to deal with a vendor for more than a few times, I'm going, why is it this hard? Why is it so hard to do business with you?
Yeah. But that's you're not trying to make their life miserable, but it's like what I'm saying is there's an opportunity to learn there that I think can be overlooked at times, because that's exactly it. It's like, those guys have been with us for 5 years, They give us a little thumbs up on the little survey every once in a while, but without talking with them, do we really know? We're kind of guessing in a way. It's like we're not guessing. We're assuming. We're assuming we know why they value us so much, and the conversations can sometimes lead to those things where it's like it's not like something brand new, but it's, geez, our superpower is over here, like. They value us for something that we thought was maybe secondary, right?
So a while back, you told me a story where you were an unhappy customer. I want to know what Blaine is like as an unhappy customer. It was a company that rhymes with Roscoe, right? Tell me what Blaine is like as an unhappy customer in that situation.
This is kind of funny. We had a supplier that was not holding up their end of the bargain, and we had to go into a meeting earlier this week, and I'm not saying anything about even the sector or anything, but my co-founder said we got talking and suddenly started bringing up some things, and then I realized they haven't delivered, like, at all. They have not held up their end of the bargain, and so it was kind of funny because I'm like, well, I'm going to join your meeting, because he had a meeting to go over some stuff with them. And So I show up and he sees me and he's like, we're in a little meeting beforehand to do like a little planning, and he just started laughing because like I had a collared shirt on and everything, and I'm like, well, yeah, here's their. They're gonna have a little bit of I'm gonna have a little moment with them.
I'm here to give her.
Yeah, exactly. And I tell you, like, I think I used to be different. I used to be, everyone. I think when I was younger, like you always want people to like you and all this kind of stuff. And I tell you, I just don't have that anymore. And so I went in, and it was an extremely uncomfortable conversation for them. And I'm not yelling and ranting and raving, but I'm not like I am. Like straight, like just as I view it, just completely honest. This is where you've fallen. This is why. This is the problem. I need to talk with someone in leadership, and I want my money back. So, and I'm not even. It's all part of negotiation, right? And as long as people are like just reasonable with me, I'm completely reasonable with them. But I will tell you, I don't pull a punch. I'm very, very, very straight with my words. I don't pull a single punch, and I have zero problem if things go south. I don't have a problem being an asshole. That's just how it is. So.
I probably have softened in old age, right? Because you got to remember, I transitioned from state trooper to business owner. Right? So, I went from ask, tell, make. Those are my steps. I'm going to ask you nicely, then I'm going to tell you to do it, then I'm going to make you do it. So to being somewhat aggressive as a business owner and demanding on what I expected and what I wanted. Yeah. And over time, that's just a leadership style that doesn't work, right, for me.
Well, this is not this is very different from leadership style from unhappy customer. Like those are two different things, right? But I think I've softened too, though, right? Because I don't go in and rant and rave. I'm not angry at all. Where before I would probably feel personally offended or they're taking advantage of me or whatever. And now it's just part of business. Yeah. But I'm very honest and very straightforward.
I think I am too. I'm very direct, but I tell you what, there's a line of questioning that, and have I told you this before? I think I've learned the greatest psychology questions from the show Hoarders. Have you ever seen that show?
I've seen the show like years ago. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
I got hooked on it like last year, and I started watching all these things. And I'm going, this is a fascinating view of life. Because, if you've never seen an episode, I mean, this is a colossal amount of shit in people's houses, right? I mean, just stuff.
It's epic.
I mean, more than you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I can see where people, because they get kind of, into it, like, oh, that's worth money, that's worth money, that's worth money, that's worth, there's always a reason why it has to be there. So imagine that the first meeting is with this psychologist, right, that comes to your house, and you're the hoarder. And he walks in, and they can't get in the door, right? They have to climb over stuff in a lot of these places to get in, and maybe there's a little path that this person uses to get to a bathroom that they can't fix because there's too much stuff in there, or a kitchen, which they can't clean because there's too much stuff in there. So all of this stuff. So every time, it's the first couple questions, I'm like going, that is brilliant, like, because they have to just fuse the situation. You got to imagine that's the most confrontational moment in maybe anybody's life, is somebody who's considered to be an authoritative or a doctor figure for treating your disorder is talking to you, right? It's like, so the way they diffuse it right up front is so good. It is so good. And I've been teasing this for a little bit here. So one of the first questions that I like that they ask, they'll walk in, they'll see this massive amount of stuff, and they go, so tell me what I'm looking at. I go, that's a brilliant question, right? Because it automatically, doesn't say, what the fuck? It says, hey, just tell me what I'm looking at. And it allows the person that lives there to kind of explain what's going on. And then the second question is always like, well, how do you think it got like this? And I'm like going, I've never seen, I mean, you cannot Perry Mason or write a law, a trial script better than those two questions, because it's the perfect setup to whatever happens next. So I've tried to just incorporate stuff like that, those type of questions.
Yeah.
When I'm dealing with folks, when I'm unhappy, well, tell me how you think it got this way. Tell me what you would do in this situation. And I learned all that from orders.
I'm gonna pocket both of those. I think that's great, great advice. But I think they're, I think I used to be more, I don't know, not confrontational, more emotional with confrontation, and now it just doesn't. It doesn't.
Great observation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like my meeting yesterday is a good example. Never really got very confrontational. It was just super clear, but I wasn't that emotional about it. And it's just because I've been through it a million times and just whatever. But you know what? I think that's how come it went a lot better, because it didn't turn into a fight or anything like that at all. It was actually just a really productive meeting, and it's just because it was like I have no problem being completely blunt, and probably too much. Maybe some people think too blunt. I think there's never a need not to, but I think that's. And that's what that's what these hoarders. They didn't walk in like this and go, what the, what's going on there? What's going on? I got to say one thing. As soon as he said, like, you walk in and you see all the stuff, and they would say, yeah, but this is worth this and this is worth that. And I think back to that quote you brought a few weeks ago where it was, it ain't dog food till a dog eats it. And I'm like, that's exactly it. None of this stuff is worth anything, because I don't think they've ever sold anything before. And if they haven't sold a thing,
they're afraid to sell it. They're afraid to sell it.
Yeah, so there's really no value then on it, right?
Because part of the rehabilitation, part of the cleanup is, what do you want to sell? What do you want to donate? What do you want to get rid of? Right? So it's like, they don't want to sell anything. They don't want to get rid of anything.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, it's funny because the most vulnerable point in a business relationship is when there's a problem, right? And I loved what you said about you not being emotional, because that's the hardest. I'm gonna call it a skill, because being able to control your emotions during a point of confrontation. And I've been guilty of not being able to control my emotions, and I'll react, right? And I remember, as a trooper, they would tell me, they're like, listen, you cannot allow the actions of one person to control the way you react. And the thought process was, you're a gentleman who enforces the law. So that's kind of the way I tried to carry myself. I'm a gentleman who enforces the law, and don't allow you to, control the way I react. But that being said, the hardest thing is solving the problem. Too many people don't try to solve the problem or ask enough questions to figure out what the problem is. It may not be the features broke. It may be something else. Like there was something weird they didn't like that happened in an email communication, or the way the payment system was set up. There might be another problem, and they're just using something else as leverage to fire at you.
Well, and I've sort of took us back onto the, should you be like, or where the dangers of listening to complaints or whatever is. But let's flip it all the way back to, this is exactly it. How do you turn complaints or angry customers into true value? And I think you hit the nail on the head, because we're talking about that all the time in our team, because it's hard. It's so easy if they say, I don't like this, change that from blue or whatever it is, right? That what we are constantly talking about over and over again is, what problem are they really describing, and how do we solve the problem? It's not up to them to solve the problem. It's up to us to solve the problem. That's what innovation is about. But we have to thoroughly understand the problem. And most of the time, or a lot of the time, it isn't what they're asking for. It isn't what they're actually complaining about. It's the result or the lack of result that they were looking for. And that's a real challenge, because sometimes if you listen to what they say, you can go down the wrong path, and you're actually not going to solve their problem, and they're still not going to be happy. It's getting to the root of the problem. That's so incredibly important.
Yeah, well, especially in software, because they're only seeing the user point of view and the result a lot of times. and they're mad about something that maybe caused it, but they can't see it.
How do you put this to best use when you have complaints? How do you learn from them and make sure that it's information that's actually valuable to solving a problem?
Well, first of all, you got to figure out what the problem is. So it takes some questions. But while you're doing that, I think what you have to remember is that person wants to be heard above anything else. You know, if I don't care if I send you an email that something's not right with my product. I want a response back, right? That you heard it. You heard it, and yeah, we know it exists. We know the problem exists. Let us look into it. That's where I don't know if you ever heard. I think I told you I developed this customer service mantra called Aura. That your customers could have an aura, or should have an aura, and it's AURA, which is acknowledge, update, resolve, and approach, right? And it was built on the, have you ever heard of what is that called? The law of three. It's about survivability, right? Which means you can live for 3 minutes without air. You can live for 3 days without water. You can live for, what is that right? Yeah, 3 hours without warmth. That's what it is. So it's 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without warmth, right? Where you can just die of hypothermia and stuff like that. 3 days without water and 3 weeks without food, right? That's like a custom, survivalist type of thought process. Like going, I have to take care of these things to survive, just to live. So I did the same thing with customer service with AURA, Aura, which is I want you to approach or acknowledge that I exist within minutes. So if it gets to an hour, if it's 59, 60 minutes or whatever, then that's too late. You've already made me mad because you didn't acknowledge me. All you got to do is say, hey, got your stuff? And it could be an autoresponder, right? Hey, got your stuff? Let us look into it. Then I want you to update me, update me in hours, not days. So you got 24 hours. If it gets to a day, right, to just update me. Hey, we looked into it. It's going to be a little bit more complicated than we thought. Let me get back to you. Then I want you to resolve it in weeks, right? Or I guess days, not weeks. So I want you to resolve it in a week, which means, hey, listen, this is kind of what we did. Here's how we're going to fix it. And then I want you to approach me in weeks, not months, which means if it gets to a month or more, and I haven't even heard from you again after that, I don't care if it's a marketing message, but this is how you stay in front of the customer's mind that I'm there for you. I'm still supporting you. I'm still a part of your life and make sure you're important as an individual user or customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I just wrote it down.
That seemed like a lot of math for a podcast.
But it was interesting. I actually wrote it down because I just thought it was it's always fun to have like an acronym,
Yeah, well, I have it written somewhere, and it's always worked. It's like when I train people on that, they go, "Oh, I get it." Right? It's just like going, all you're doing is finding a way to make sure the customer doesn't feel forgotten. Yeah, that's the first part, right, of solving the problem.
Yeah, and that's oftentimes what we found some of the most important one is just that acknowledgement and getting up to them really quickly. That's the number one is you don't want to leave it. So we try and be super fast on that. On everything, but we try and be super fast, especially on that first point of contact and responding, right?
Hey, all right, so I know Dry Run is a world-class company. So tell us about them. As our official sponsor of today's episode, tell us about Dry Run.
Yeah, because Casual Mike was last week, I guess. So I guess we're back to Dry Run. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about our customers and about the problems we help them solve. As cash flow forecasting, financial modeling sort of software, we have a lot of customers. But I'll tell you, the ones we help oftentimes the most are the ones with really lumpy, highly variable, those peaks and valleys, feast and famine. And when customers are dealing with that, when companies are dealing with that feast and famine, I think sometimes they don't realize how much money they're leaving on the table. because those slow months, everybody, you got the team sitting idle. They're not getting those billable hours out the door. And by the end of the year, you kind of look back, you had some good months, you had some bad months, it evens out. But we're always talking with our customers of what if those below average months came up to average? What if you actually took your average of your top 4 months and you matched that all year? You'd be shocked at how much more money and how much more revenue you can generate with the same resources, with the same team. And so what we do at Dry Run is we're financial forecasting software. We can, first of all, you can take a snapshot of what's happened in the past. You kind of get an idea where you're at, what your goals are. But most importantly, we can help you see those peaks and valleys in your cash flow. We can help you see the peaks and valleys in your sales pipeline. And we can help them see them far enough ahead that you can deal with them, that you can backflow and get some of those slow months back up, get the high months, smooth them out so you're not over capacity, and make sure that you're actually doing the most with your capacity and generating the most revenue, generating the most profit.
That's right. Hey,
so dryrun.com.
Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, it is dryrun.com. And, if you're part of the Clear Path to Cash, Blaine is letting folks in my program come on board. So contact Cash Flow Mike for the Clear Path to Cash, and you can get a little bit of time testing out Dry Run.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can tell, we are like absolutely on the same wavelength when Cash Flow Mike and we're dealing with cash flow. Clear path to cash, finding that hidden cash in your business. This is problems that businesses all face that is so important to patch up and to get fixed. And we can help. And a lot of times we help people as a team. So come talk with us.
Yeah. All right. So you ever heard the story or that Nordstrom took back, how you can just return anything Nordstrom, right? They took back a set of tires.
Yeah, I think you told me about it. Yeah, you told me about that one.
Yeah, I told you about that before, probably on the podcast, but it was amazing to me. Like their whole business profile is about solving a problem. Right? That's all they wanted to do, right? And because they always thought that the closer they were, the best relationship they could have with a customer was solving their problem. And every time they could do that, they could charge higher prices because they had a better relationship. And the more times that they had people that complained or were difficult to deal with or unhappy customers, they had to lower prices. So theirs was about, I don't have to be a commodity and compete on price because you're coming here because I solve your problems, whatever that is. And that's a mantra that could be taken across your life, your personal life, your business life, just help solve people's problems. But the Nordstrom thing was interesting because when they took back the tires, I had to go figure out, okay, why'd they do that? This lady, obviously, she's older. She didn't buy tires at Nordstrom's. Couldn't have. They've never sold them.
Yeah.
So why did they take them back? Well, it's because it was just a few months prior. This was a new Nordstrom store. And it was like, how malls, they always have anchor stores? I think this was an old Sears or something like that did sell tires that she got it at. So she went back to the same building, same anchor store that she bought the tires from and go, well, this is where I got it. The address is on the receipt. And Nordstrom's, rather than confront or complain, they just took the tires. They gave her the money. There's so much power in that. Now, you can't let people just do that. You can't let customers just come in from everywhere with all kinds of different things and all that. But think about the mileage they've gotten off of that story where it's like an urban...
No pun intended.
Yeah, yeah, I wish I would have been that smart. Where am I going? I'm doing this on purpose, sneaking this in. But I wasn't that smart. But it's one of those things where it's like now an urban legend. Like, did they really do it? How do you know? How did they do it? Why did they do it? Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing.
It's amazing. But especially today, you obviously, like you said, you can't do that every time. It would just get like you'd be out of business in a month. But to have a story like that, to be able to push online is pretty epic because that can give you a lot of press, right? And I do remember selling. This is a total sidetrack, but I remember selling some tires one time. But it was actually the wheels. Like we had the rims and the tires. And I had a leased car, and I was my lease was over. I was taking it back, but in the meantime, I had bought winter tires because back when I had to spend my winters in Edmonton, you had to have winter tires and swap these tires out. So I had these tires and these spare rims, and
do you get the studded tires up there? Do you get the ones with studs up there?
Not the studs, just winter tires that are softer for when it gets ultra cold, and so I flipped my car back in, and I had these extra tires. Of course, it didn't fit on the new car, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just get rid of them. So put them up on Kijiji, which is Canada's kind of Craigslist, and just what I thought was kind of funny is guy shows up, backs up onto my driveway, back of his hatchback, because there's kind of sports car tires, and he had a different model of car, but the hatch comes up, and he walked up to me. It didn't say a word. I don't even think he made eye contact. I think he was just looking at the tires, and he handed me a big wad of cash and walked over and threw him in the back, slammed his thing down, and gone. It was like about 15 seconds, I think, in loading these 5 tires up. And in the meantime, I'm just like counting the cash going, well, it looks like real cash, so I guess I'll just let, but didn't even acknowledge me. It was the weirdest thing, like the weirdest sale. But it was also probably the best one because I don't even have to talk with the guy. Just take my money.
Now, what I think is crazy is, what'd you call that thing? Kijiji?
Yeah, it's a total Canadian thing. Canada's weird, man. Look at it. Well, I should say that because you guys have, like, seriously, the biggest place for reselling crap here is called Craigslist. Who the hell's Craig? Like, seriously. Yeah. So, do I really feel bad about Kijiji?
Yeah. Do people still use Craigslist?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't sell stuff down here. I just know that there's something called Craigslist.
Maybe. I think it's been years since I even seen the site.
Oh, maybe I'm completely wrong. So, but I think people still use Kijiji. Here, I'm just giving like free bonus to something called Kijiji. But anyway.
Oh yeah, Craigslist still exists.
Is it still just kind of looks like DOS?
It looks exactly the same as it did 10 years ago or longer.
Man, there is not a lot of effort put in the UI there.
Yeah. But do you pay for stuff? How do they make money doing that? I don't know.
I have no idea.
After they got in all that bad press about all kinds of weird stuff you could get on Craigslist, I stopped going there. I don't know.
I don't even know it. I just have heard of it because I've never sold anything on Craigslist. And I think I've heard people sell more stuff on Facebook now, but I've never really done that either. I don't sell stuff. You know what? I just give it away and I deal with the sale half the time.
Yeah. Well,
life's too short. Try and sell something for $50,
I get it. Hey, but speaking of buying stuff, you can do that on mikeandblaine.com. You can buy us a beer. You can buy some shirts. You can be the next beer sponsor. You could be the next Neighbor Pat, right?
Yes.
And bring your moose drool to our place so we can show the world all the wonderful things that you can do.
And it's easy. It's so easy. Mike is in, Texas, but San Antonio. So all you have to do is deliver some beer to Mike. And I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. Like, honestly, let me know if you're a brewery in the valley here and you want to be featured, just get me 4 beer. Just drop it off. I'll come pick it up. Just give me 4 beer and I'll sponsor, and you can be the sponsor for the month. And I'll just, 4 different beer. It has to be 4 different.
It was funny when Rough House Brewery sponsored me for that month. I drove halfway. I met them halfway. Just drove up there, grabbed what they had, sponsor, talked about them for a whole month, drank all their beers.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're if you're at Bonehouse or Goldwater, I'm probably there on my bike. We're there every weekend, probably drinking beer anyway. Just hand me 4 beer, and we'll feature you. We can feature you right here. So, those are fun places, good places for beer.
Yeah, the one thing right before we close that we didn't touch on in this quote was a great source of learning. How do you use a complaint to learn? All right. So, a couple of different ways I'm thinking of right off the bat is, how do we actually handle complaints? How do we actually handle that? I can learn more about my own company and the processes that I have in order to just handle complaints and disseminate information, right? Because that was one of the biggest things early on at Finnegraph, is that I would talk to somebody, I got like a little list, somebody else got a little list, and they never jived up. We just kind of had all these little people that knew little things all around the company. But we didn't have a central place where we could prioritize what needed to happen, right? So I think learning about your own process is one. You got something else?
Well, I think we did cover it to some degree when we were talking about the learning component is about solving problems and understanding their problem, learning what their problem is incredibly valuable, way beyond just a complaint, understanding the problem. But you're completely right. How do you disseminate that amongst the team? And like we have, like Slack channels are the main use for us. We make sure comments are on there. We have like all sorts of different channels, but we need to make sure everybody knows and hears, hey, this is what someone said. This is what happened here. This because everybody needs to know it from top, bottom, left, right. Everybody in the organization can learn from what our customers are telling us, both good and bad.
Yeah, right on. So, hey, so what did you learn today? Anything new?
I learned about Texas ice storms, and when you said we have a half an inch, and I thought, man, if you say half an inch of snow, I'm going to fall off my chair, because you can't shut Canada down with 4 feet of snow and minus 40. So, but then we said ice. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's legit, man. Like a half inch of ice, that's different. So that
I have a new pavilion that hasn't seen sun yet, but it's seen icicles this long. You know, 3 inches long, hanging off the front of it. I'm like going, I built this brand new pool, and the week after, it's kind of to the point where I can go out there and hang out. Now I can't go out there and hang out. This thing has been teasing me for a year.
Oh, you got to be almost there. Hopefully it warms up this week, and
yeah, we just got plants put in. The more hardy stuff, right? Not the stuff that's coming in March, April, but the things that were already going to be outside in the nursery. They've already got some length and width, and they're already in huge. What are those? 5 gallon? Nah, it's bigger than 5 gallon. What are those big pots that you transplant them out of? Well, anyway, bigger than I know of, but they're supposed to be hardy enough because they would be outside anyway. And they're in the same dirt that they were, that they would have been outside in. They just have more room now.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
we'll see how many of them make it.
Yeah. But good conversation, and I think it was interesting because we spent more time talking about in a way that I think the issues with the quote as far as make sure you find out from your good customers what's happening, learn from them as well. But of course, the big thing is learning from those complaints, not just trying to fix them or address them or whatever. That's part of it, of course, make sure your customer's happy, but learning from it is the key.
Right on. Hey, this is episode 76. Almost said 66. Yeah. Episode 76. I'm Mike Mylan. That is Blaine Birch, and you've been listening to Mike and Blaine. And we're going to see you next week, right? We're good. We're back.
Sounds good. Number 77 next week, guys. Join us.
Check out their website at mikeandblaine.com. Then subscribe to the podcast and buy these guys a beer.